Barbara, we made it.
I don't believe it.
London, 1965.
Greetings, Whovians, and welcome to a Who Universe new review here. As today we are going to be taking a look at the So Bridgerton story of Doctor Who that we got this weekend. Yes, it is. It pretty much is Bridgerton. Every corner you look at this story, you're reminded of the series of Bridgerton, which, funny enough, is actually currently showing its new season on Netflix, which I'll. If you're somebody who hasn't watched Bridgerton before and you want to have a sense or feel of what the program is, then be sure to go and look at Netflix because they've just got some new episodes out just recently, and they're going to have part 2 out later this summer, which might be interesting for people who want to check out Bridgerton if you want to see how the program, how they do it compared to how Doctor Who's doing their version of Bridgerton in this story. Enough said. Let's get into the action, shall we? Because there's quite a bit to unpack here in this sort of review for the Roger story. So, well, where do we begin? I mean, let's sort of call out the fact that Susan Twist's character, once again, we see a portrait of her disguised as somebody else. Ruby very suspicious by that, and it's been very suspicious ever since she met this Susan Twist character as the hiker back in the 73 Yard story. She's been very suspicious about her behavior, the fact that she just keeps popping up in like different areas, and then Dot and Bobble, they saw her again, etc. You'll notice, yeah, obviously Ruby becomes more and more suspicious by the fact that her face keeps popping up every time they travel. Well, we see that portrait at one point, but they did, obviously the Doctor doesn't see it, but Ruby does, so it becomes very apparent. Now, of course, we need to obviously discuss about the fact that the opening moments of the story, we get to see what appears to be, well, the beginnings of this new creature who can shapeshift, so basically like formal shapeshift creatures that we've met before. This one seems to be very different because they seem to be referring to cosplay a lot. And you'll notice that in the story, they keep bringing up cosplay this, cosplay that, which is almost sort of, I don't know whether that's a foreshadowing for next week's story. If that is indeed a foreshadowing, then clearly these creatures are not supposed to exist. And these creatures will essentially exist through someone's imagination. Because if it is a cosplay move, then yes, somebody imagined these creatures to life. So it would be very interesting to see if there was actually some sort of like children's fairy tale stuff going on with these creatures as to why they exist. Because even the Doctor was a bit curious about these creatures at first. Like, yeah, oh, they can shapeshift. So he's met some shapeshifters in the past. Nothing along the lines of electrocuting someone's body and taking their physical form. Because yes, that's one thing they were able to do, is basically take their sort of outfits and take their personalities with them, and they're essentially becoming that person disguised as that person, which is very, very, very unique for them to do that. They kind of look very, they kind of hiss like, looks like sort of cats a little bit, but more of a, well, I wouldn't say cats because they're not very close to like cat hissing, but it's more of, yeah, it's sort of a messed up version of a cat in some way. Like they sort of like made these weird ricket noises like crickets and stuff, which is very, very bizarre why they made these weird like these weird sort of animal sound effects every time they hiss at someone, which is very like really weird for an alien to do that. Because yeah, to me it doesn't feel like aliens. They kind of feel more like, yeah, they kind of feel like they're trying to be like insects that have come to life into human form. Very bizarre. It's a very bizarre like way to sort of describe the sort of enemies we're seeing as very, yeah, they're kind of more like they're based on insects rather than moths and stuff like that. Of course, course, we encounter the Duchess, who's basically in a normal form, even though her waitress is basically disguised as one of those creatures, because there's obviously roughly 5 of these creatures lurking around, disguising themselves as human beings, and then they make that weird noise every time they move their necks, which you could basically tell it's them. Obviously, what we found out, and also, Ruby kind of gets suspicious about one of them who confronts her at one point, very suspicious, and even Ruby gets some weird feedback coming from the Duchess, which is very interesting. Even the Doctor was a bit suspicious by that. And obviously the Doctor, however, was very distracted due to the fact that he was dealing with Rogue, and we'll come back to that very shortly. But for Ruby's side of the story, really, and this week, she became suspicious about one of these creatures, confronts the young girl, who's basically upset because she doesn't fall in love with this guy, and she has this sort of handheld, sort of this written permission that she needs to get married to this guy in order, it's basically one of those old-fashioned ways of marriage that they did back in the day. But yes, obviously what we didn't know is that it turns out she was one of those creatures this entire time, because as we learned throughout the Ruby Sunday sections of the story, she plays off like she was human, but really she was one of the creatures this entire time, and we didn't even know she was one of the creatures. She laid herself very, very well, to the point that all of a sudden it took Ruby Sunday to explain about, oh, she's from the future, till she finally exposes herself as one of those creatures, which is very, very interesting. She saved it till then to show her true colors, which is very, very, she kind of feels like more of the sensible one out of the family, which is very interesting. And obviously the Doctor at first thought that they caught Ruby, but luckily Ruby was able to use battle mode because she had this sort of earpiece that made her go into battle mode, which was really clever. She was able to prevent herself from being controlled by the creature, which is very clever. I don't know how she did it, but she did it. But anyway, now we go into the Doctor's side of the story, which obviously they did mention in the synopsis that this story was going to change the Doctor's life forever, and it certainly has, because we finally obviously met Rogue, who I first thought that was going to be Captain Jack because of the way he behaved with the guard and stuff. Turns out it's not Captain Jack. It's in fact indeed a bounty hunter. They are indeed telling the truth about the bounty hunter thing. Yeah, essentially he's a bounty hunter who lost someone. He didn't really specify who he lost. He just talked about traveling with someone at one point. Then he just was on his own pretty much, and we don't know why, or what happened to this said person that he was referring to. But however, though, we noticed that he had these feelings towards the Doctor very quickly, which is very bizarre, because usually in the past, whenever we had David Tennant as the Doctor, he always said he couldn't fall in love with someone. But yet for this version of the Doctor, he's falling in love with this guy like it's okay to be that way, which is very weird for the Doctor to be like that, because he always used to be resentant about the idea of falling in love with human beings. But the fact that it's a bounty hunter he falls in love with is very telling, that it seems to have made him sort of whole. It sort of made him feel comfortable in being involved with that, which is very, very bizarre, very surprising for the Doctor to be that way. And then, of course, we also, it took a while for Rogue to realize that who the Doctor was the Time Lord. Of course, they had that really cool scene with Ncuti using his psychic paper to sort of scan him and show him the previous faces of himself, which was very, very clever. That made Rogue sort of surprised that, oh my God, it's a Time Lord he's talking to. And then, of course, he introduced Rogue to the TARDIS, even though the TARDIS was a bit hesitant about having the bounty hunter in her ship, which is very understandable. Obviously, we have the fact that Rogue and the Doctor it was up to these two to defeat these creatures, and they were trying to come up with a plan to stop it. And at first, the Doctor thought he lost Ruby, but turns out Ruby was able to save herself. So the Doctor was worried because he trapped Ruby in there, and he's like, I don't want to risk losing Ruby at this point. So obviously it was up. So Rogue decided to take over and said, you know what, I'm going to take over from here. And he took over and basically pushed Ruby out of the way to get her out, put himself in there to risk his own life to save not only Ruby, but for the Doctor himself, which was really, really smart. And that whole moment where he sort of got affected it with the Doctor kind of made him sacrifice himself for the Doctor, and obviously the Doctor usually gets sad every time someone sacrifices themselves for him, because it usually because that happened a lot in David Tennant's 10th Doctor reign, as we saw lots of people die in his name, which was basically what we witnessed a lot in Doctor Who, and obviously now we that's it's happening again, it seems. And of course the Doctor obviously makes sure that his ship goes, that Rogue's ship goes into orbit, waiting for him whenever he shows up, which who knows when that's going to be, because we don't even know where he went. In terms, he may have died, we don't even know. But then of course, obviously, Ruby realized that the Doctor was sad, but the Doctor tried to hide that sadness. And then he puts that ring on, the ring that Rogue gave him, put it on and accepted it. Interesting, because it makes you wonder, are we going to see Rogue again down the road? Maybe. I think there's a chance that Rogue will show up again down the road, and maybe there's a chance we'll see him. I don't know. I mean, I would be very intrigued to see if Jonathan Groff does make a return at some during Ncuti's run as the Doctor, and we end up seeing them meet again and find out what happens when they do reunite. Very interesting, because I'll be very intrigued to see how the Doctor reacts to finding out that Rogue was alive the entire time. Be very interesting. Either way, I actually kind of enjoyed the story. The story was actually, and it was also kind of funny that the Doctor was playing Kylie Minogue at one point. Can't Get You Out of My Head. Yeah, he was dancing to that, and he sung the words as well. You know how cheeky this Doctor can really get if he's singing Kylie Minogue. I'm sure Kylie Minogue was in bits on the scene if she was watching, that is. What a performance from Ncuti in this story. I mean, you gotta admit he did a great performance, didn't he? In a whole Bridgerton atmosphere that they've done for this episode. I'm chuffed. Honestly, I'm chuffed with it. Anyway, so that's pretty much all I've got to say really on Rogue, and I thought it was good. It was also really good. We got to see a flashback of some sort where Ruby Sunday's mum asks the Doctor, "Can you make sure to promise to keep her safe?" And he promises that, and he managed to promise that, which is good. Of course, now we come to the next time trailer, and we all know what the next week's story represents, don't we? We know what it's going to be. It's going to be the beginning of the finale for the series, and they didn't really give much away. In fact, all they've done is essentially previous moments of when Susan Twist shows up. They show bits of the new footage showing Susan Twist on the TV screen and then transforming into different objects, which definitely seems like this was the method that she was able to get to these destinations the Doctor got to, simply because of this television screen that seems to give her some sort of power for her to transform into these disguises. And then we see Mel, and then we obviously hear from Kate Stewart in the end, who said, whatever the storm is, it is coming. So they say about the storm, which we saw in trailers, there is a storm in this finale. So I wonder who's behind that. I wonder, could it be a god? An ancient god? Could it be even returning enemies? I'll be very intrigued to see what happens here, because I think things are going to get very interesting next week, knowing that kind of got a gist that, we know Mel Bush is in there, we know Kate Stewart's there, we also know that Yasmin Finney, aka Rose Noble, is due to come back next week, so we know she's going to be involved in some capacity and probably have an importance heading into this story. So all these people have got some importance to this story, and the fact that they're all trying to figure out what's going on with Ruby's past, because obviously Ruby still doesn't know anything about her mother, her real mom. So I'm sure we're going to finally get answers to that question, hopefully beginning next week. Maybe we'll finally know what deal with that is, hopefully. Maybe it's all, there's more to it than we think we know. And funny enough, Russell actually said in an interview a few days ago, I think it was Russell or someone in the Doctor Who production team says that we still haven't figured out, we still haven't Susan Twist's character right. They say that no one's got it. If that's true, that basically means that this character that Susan Twist is, it's going to be something that is going to be unexpected, and somebody that's either not returning or completely brand new. That's how I'm seeing this. So that's how I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this as like, okay, maybe this is a hint towards that. I don't know, but I'm very intrigued to see what's going to happen about the Legend of Ruby Sunday. I think the Legend of Ruby Sunday is going to be very intriguing. What they're going to do here. With that said, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see really next week and see how it all plays out, because I mean, they're being very secretive about some things in this episode. They're obviously not showing a lot for a very good reason, because There's obviously more to this story than we think. Very intrigued to see where they're going with this because Russell kept saying in interviews this is going to be the most ambitious finale he's ever filmed. So he's very excited about this one. I'm still holding hopes for a Susan Foreman Doctor reunion. Will we get it in the finale? I hope so. I hope to God this is the opportunity Karen M4 to finally return to Doctor Who. If it is, I am so ready for it because I've been waiting for this for them to finally do this moment for a very long time, and I think this would be a great year to make it happen. I hope it happens now. I really do, because this would be a great way to reunite the Doctor's granddaughter and the Doctor, who were essentially the first two faces we saw in the original run of Doctor Who, along with Ian, who obviously passed away with Ian Russell. Jacqueline Hill, we already know she passed away years ago. Yeah, the fact that Karen M. Ford is essentially the last original cast member to still be alive, necessarily make an appearance here, makes me very excited that this could very well happen. So hopefully we're heading in that direction this year. So fingers crossed. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will have my continuity out probably tomorrow, and also obviously trailers for Legend of Ruby Sunday. If there is a trailer, that is. We don't even know if the BBC is going to release a trailer. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll continue to be secretive. I don't know, but I'm sure we'll get some answers to this story soon enough, what they're hyping up. I think they're going to likely just make the trailer very short, very cryptic, not really saying anything, but I don't know. Maybe the BBC trailer will give more scenes out. Who knows? But anyway, hope you guys enjoy your the rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you all with the Who Universe news during the week. So see you then.